400 some odd years after the Battle of Thermopylae in Greece, the Golden Age of Greece lasted a good 50 years, and it flourished, and that was later taken over or embraced by Alexander the Great, who was Macedonian. Again, Macedonians are counted as Greeks, but he's just a particular part of northern Greece. And he carried that with him throughout the places that he conquered and the places that he occupied. And he spread the Greek philosophy and the Greek language, and he spread all of these things to the farthest reaches of the civilized world at the time. So that included all of Persia up to the border of what is currently present-day India. The Greeks gave the world a lot of important things: art, architecture, the buildings, the arts, the statuary. They gave us epic poetry, Homer, and the Iliad and the Odyssey. They gave us democracy, self-rule, people ruling. Of course, it wasn't the same democracy that we see today in both America or in the world.
You can see the influence that Greek culture, Greek history, Greek philosophy, Greek thinking has all had on the United States, how it is today. And it's everything from words and language to music, to system of governance, even to architecture. You know, when the country was first founded, it's purposeful that you saw a Greek revival trend throughout the United States. This is why houses and government buildings and banks and post office were all built in Greek revival style. They were hearkening back to the ancient democracies of Athens and the Roman republics, and the United States was to be the new Roman Republic. It was to be the new democracy of ancient Greece.
And then we see that once Christ came into our midst in 0 AD or 0 BC, and his ministry in 33 AD, where it came to an end, a tragic end, he also planted the seeds of religion, of what became the Greek Orthodox religion, as I mentioned before. But he also ministered to people. He helped cure people. He made teachers out of his disciples. The disciples went out and preached the word, and the word became the church, and the church again looked for leadership. It developed leadership along the same parallels as the civic government. In larger cities, there were the metropolitans, the Greek cardinals. There were the bishops, there were the priests. The hierarchy was there. And that set in motion during Constantine the Great's time, which was around 330 AD, when he founded Constantinople, a city that was founded and adopted his name. The Byzantine Empire lasted for 1100 years. It had its ups and downs. It had its heyday. Heyday was under Constantine the Great and under Justinian, who built the famous Church of Hagia Sophia, which still exists today, over 1,000 years later, and you could still go and visit the church. So the Byzantines left us a lot also, but they survived for almost 1,100 years. And then from there, of course, Western Europe started to grow. The Dark Ages that were dark in Western Europe were not dark during Byzantium, because the art that they produced and the literature that they produced and the church hierarchy and the buildings that they produced had no equivalent in the West. And then later, when Constantinople fell, people from Constantinople fled to the West, and that became the seeds of the Renaissance. And then we get into sort of modern European history after that.
Most people in their history classes will learn about the ancient Greeks. They might learn about the Byzantine Empire. They might even learn about Eastern Orthodoxy. But very few know the history of the Greeks that grew up around them and their families for over 100 years here in the city of Atlanta.
The original founders of the church in Atlanta were here over 100 years ago, 125 maybe years ago. And when they came to Atlanta, they brought both their culture and their religion.
And it was done by people immigrating from Europe. They came here to find a better life for themselves in the areas of the world that they came from, which were normally under war, or they were under famine or extreme poverty. And when they came here, the one thing they brought with them is their Orthodox faith.
And when the Greeks first settled down here, they were met with skepticism and even a little bit of bigotry. I mean, here was this Eastern European people who were moving in with their weird customs and their religion that no one had really seen before in this part of the United States and even in the western parts of Europe. And so the Greeks got together and created their own little community all in that area up and down Pryor Street south of downtown.
Our community has been here in Atlanta since 1905 and has continued to grow and eventually became the Cathedral of the metropolis, which oversees the entire southeast of the United States.
And so when you look at the makeup, whether it's business or residents in downtown Atlanta 100 years ago, there's Greek influence and Greek business and Greek enterprise all over the place, and it's thriving.
Here in Atlanta, Georgia, we're the home of the Mother Lodge, AHEPA, the American Hellenic Educational Progressive Association, which was founded July 26 in 1922 by 8 members, and really was undergirded by bigotry and civil rights, which those Greek immigrants faced here in Atlanta at the hands of the KKK.
And of course, even during civil rights time, we stepped up to the plate and we helped we were there with people that were fighting for their civil rights. And in the 1960s, our Archbishop at the time, Iakovos, decided it was very important, to partake in that. And he also came down and he befriended Martin Luther King and he helped him out in any way that he could. He didn't march per se, but he was there with him and they did meet and they remained friends to the end. But Iakovos' inspiration was say, if we can do this to these people, they can do it to these, meaning the African American culture, then they can do it to anybody. And he came from a place in Greece, or actually from the Aegean, that was an island that was controlled by the Turks and the Ottomans before that. And he had seen suppression. He had seen some of the things that can be, people can be put down and be secondary citizens or even third-class citizens. And so he said, it is time for us to step up to the plate and be supportive of this because nobody should be treated that way. So Archbishop Iakovos left his legacy in a lot of different ways, but more importantly, if we think about Atlanta, he also left it in the civil rights sphere of politics.
And even today, there's over 20,000 people of Greek descent who live in the state of Georgia. They're your neighbors, they're your friends, they conduct business with you, their children grow up with your children. We can't tell the story of Georgia history or Atlanta history without mentioning the contribution of Greeks and their culture and their history.